Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Austin Fish Farner. Austin is an off-road racer, navigator, media personality, you might say. He does a lot in off-road, especially in the desert racing scene, getting his feet wet in the Ultra 4 scene. So we're going to talk to Austin about his life and what brought him to where he's at. Austin, thank you for coming on board.
Right on. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. First, before I ask where you were born and raised, is Fish actually your middle name?
No, it is not actually, but it might as well be. It might as well be my first name because that's just what everybody calls me.
Right. Well, it's so much easier because when you say, hey, I talked to Austin, everybody goes, well, which one? You go, I talked to Fish. Everybody knows it's either you or Sal.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And I think Sal is more Sal.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I'm not related. Some people are always like, are you related to Sal Fish? I'm like, no, just nickname it.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started with where were you born and raised?
Actually, right here in San Diego County in Vista. Okay. Vista, California, and I've been in either Vista or Oceanside most of my younger life, and all pretty much San Diego County.
All right, so starting there, that's more Vista. Is that more rural or is that more suburb?
No, it's suburb. Yeah, okay. It's track home stuff. So it's suburb. You're right next to the 5 and the 78 freeway, not far from the 15. It's kind of right in the middle of the 5 and the 15. So yeah, definitely not rural.
Okay, so you couldn't jump on a motorcycle at a young age and go ripping out in the fields.
No, but we did do some of that in my truck, and we got in trouble quite a bit for that. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that stuff.
Well, let's talk about those early years first, and then we'll talk about that trouble on the truck. So, how did you do in school, and what was your? Did it influence your decisions in off-road later on?
Well, school was always I don't know. It wasn't like super exciting. I wasn't like the 4.0 student or anything. Definitely had fun. Got in trouble a little bit, not too much. Was fairly nice in school. Had quite a few friends. And then honestly, throughout school, I never really did anything with off-road. Didn't have anything to do with off-road until maybe in high school was the first time I was even introduced to anything off-road. My parents didn't do off-road or anything like that. I went to Mexico with my parents quite a bit. We would go to San Felipe quite a bit, or even Ensenada. We would go to Estero Beach and stay there just on family vacations and go fishing and stuff off the shore there. That was my first, Mexico experiences. But as far as off-road racing, none of that really started happening until in high school.
Okay, so what were your interests back then?
Fishing, actually. Fishing was my big interest. Hence my name, Fish. It is. Yeah. I've been fishing since I was probably, 7 or 8 years old, maybe something like that. Going out on, it started in the lake. We lived right by a lake, so there was Guajome Lake in Vista was actually right behind my house. So we would just every day walk back there and go fishing, and there's little creeks there. We would go in there and do fishing stuff. And then it started transitioning into ocean fishing, and I would go out on the sport boats out of Oceanside and do ocean fishing. And then that kind of took over. That was a lot more fun than lake fishing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So then, of course, fish comes from your desire to fish all the time?
Yeah, as far as the nickname that everybody knows, it actually I think it was 2001, I signed up on racedesert.com, which everybody knows, Race Desert.
Yep.
And my nickname on there when I signed up was FishDood. It was Fish, DOOD.
Right.
That was kind of my nickname for any like online message boards or anything that I did. So I signed up on there as FishDood when I was, I don't even know how old I would have been then. And, that was 20 years ago, I guess. So 17 years old then. But that's where the fish nickname came from, was being on Race Desert as FishDood.
Okay. All right. So then were you in school, did you play sports or anything like that?
No, I didn't do anything like that. Mostly just hung out with friends. I was pretty into baseball, but I did not play baseball. But we went to a lot of Padres games as a kid with my parents and stuff. We got to know a few of the players back then, and we had a lot of fun going to Padres games. That was probably the thing that we did the most, was go to Jack Murphy. Actually, was the stadium name back then, before Qualcomm or anything like that. So that was pretty much just did that and fishing for fun back then.
Okay, excellent. So then let's talk about your truck. Those high school years, it sounded like, is when you were driving the truck. What kind of truck was it?
Yeah, well, I actually, I first went to the desert when I was about 15 or so with some friends, and we went to Ocotillo Wells, and my friend had a Toyota T100, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, because he had like a drop-down bracket lift on it, which I didn't even know what a drop-down bracket lift one was then. But, it was nothing special. It was just a drop-down bracket and bigger tires and a skid plate on the front. But we would go to Ocotillo, and it was super fun, just riding around in that thing. So I was like, man, this is pretty cool. And so then when I turned 16, I was like, man, what kind of truck am I going to get? So I just kind of started looking at trucks, and I was like, oh, you know what? The T100, it never broke on us. It would always seem good. I'm going to get a Toyota. So then I ended up getting not a T100, just a regular Toyota pickup, 4-wheel drive, extra cab, 1992. That was my first vehicle, was that car.
Okay. And did you modify it, or did you keep it stock, or did you buy it partially modified?
It was completely stock when I bought it. It had the stock wheels and tires. It had everything stock. It was like an older man that had owned it. It didn't even have very many miles on it. I don't remember how many. Totally stock, but then, it was 4-wheel drive. So as soon as I bought it, we started, using it and just going up on some trails around Vista and by Lawrence Welk off the 15, and just, doing some like miniature rock crawling and going up some dirt trails. We thought we were really cool back then, but, just a couple 16-year-olds and friends having fun in it. And then it progressed into by the time I sold it in 2005, it was a full-blown race truck by then.
Oh, okay. So you pre-runnered it out?
Oh yeah. We raced. I guess I could start back where it started. We had the first thing I did to it was a Total Chaos kit. So I became friends with Nicole and Matt at Total Chaos and got one of their kits for the front end. Just it converted it to a 2-wheel drive when I did that, because we put a long travel kit on it, but I didn't put the axles ever in it.
Okay.
Because that was too much money. I didn't have the money to get the axles, so I was like, oh, screw it. So just kept it 2-wheel drive, and then I converted it to coilovers instead of the torsion bars, and then it just started evolving from there, and it just never looked back.
And it doesn't.
Yeah.
Do you still have that truck?
No. I sold it in 2005. Yeah. We had the Total Chaos kit on it, and then it had a bed cage. And then it had a cage in it, and then I became friends with this guy, Mike Clark, who owned ESB Fabrications in Escondido. And we put one of his kits on the front end of it, which was better than the Total Chaos kit because it was bigger, wider, got more travel, a little bit better. And then we decided to start racing it. So then we did some MDR races with it back in the day in the 1450 class, which back then was the class to race in my opinion, because it was a bunch of kids with their home built trucks from their driveway. We would, some people would drive it to the race and then race it, drive it home. And it was really a lot of fun. That was where I first got introduced to desert racing. Was at the MDR races.
Wasn't that like a two-wheel drive pre-runner class?
Not specific to two-wheel drive. Actually,
Okay.
when the class started, the only rules were a windshield and a license plate. You had to have a license plate on your car, so it had to be street legal,
Okay.
and you had to have a windshield and working doors, basically.
Oh wow.
So you couldn't have a steel cab, and working doors. So you couldn't have a fiberglass race truck and enter that class.
Okay.
So it was all Toyotas, Rangers, a couple S10s, basically a mini truck class, and then every once in a while you'd get somebody that had like an F-150, but most of them were the mini trucks that were in that class.
Okay. Cool. And how many years did you race that?
I actually raced with Dan Vance first. So I met my buddy Dan Vance. A lot of people know who he is from back in the day. He had a Ranger. I never raced his Ranger, but then he built a Toyota, and I got him hooked up with Total Chaos on it, and it kind of took off from there. He had a couple Toyotas, but we raced in 2003. I think was the first time I actually raced with Dan, and then we won the championship in 2004 in his car. And then in 2005, we ended up, 2003, we won the championship in his truck. And then he sold it, and we raced my truck in 2004, and we won the championship in my truck. So we won back-to-back championships in 1450 class.
Wow, in different vehicles. That's good.
Yeah, it was super fun. We would just take turns driving. He would drive the first half of the race, and I would drive the second half. And it was just, it worked out well. It was a lot of fun.
So let's talk about your immersion into off-road racing and some of the people that you've raced with. I know that you did some racing with Pistol. I helped with his race effort back in the mid and late 2000s. Worked with him and Fast Eddie and Chad Bunch and all that.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever meeting you, so I don't know if the timing ever was right. But talk about your experiences there.
Yeah, well, as far as Pistol specifically, or just
everybody
racing in general?
Everybody.
Yeah, so I think the very first time I ever raced was I rode in a Class 5 car with Dale Hines. It was Frank Hines' son, and it was a 5-open car, and it was at Ridgecrest, an MDR Ridgecrest race. And that was the very first time. I was 17 years old. My parents had to sign a minor release just so I could race. And so I rode in a 5 car, and then it was super fun. I was hooked, So that was even before I had my truck racing. So that was a lot of fun. And then after that, I raced, like I said, with Dan, and then in my truck. And then since then, I've literally, I think, raced almost every class that there is. I raced a Class 11 one time with Dennis Sletton. That was actually really fun. Class 11s are awesome. We even jumped the wall back in the day for everybody who knows what that is. That was a lot of fun. And then after that, I raced, what else? I raced seven trucks, 7200 truck. And then I went to work for Pfluger, actually, for Alan Pfluger.
Okay.
For a little while with John Hoffman. I was actually working for John Hoffman. He was running Alan's program. And I was on his team for a while. I did not race with him then, but I was on the team, and he was racing Pro Truck when I first started working there. And then he got the trophy truck when I was there. So then I was on a trophy truck team, and it was pretty cool because, Alan's team was basically unlimited budget or very close to it. Whatever they needed to win the race, they got, and they would have all the spares and everything. So it was my first time seeing what a real high-level professional off-road team looked like.
Yeah, I've never been around one of those. Well, I
much different than Pistol's program.
Yeah, I take it back. I did help Roger in an offbeat kind of way when Lance Clifford was his navigator. I shadowed them because Lance was when they finished with the trophy truck, I was supposed to take him back to Dave Cole's Class 1 car, but we didn't end up having to do that because that car didn't make it.
Oh, so, okay.
that was my my working with a high-end team like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely different. It's definitely, once you do that, you really are envious of not being able to do that in the future. It's definitely nice. You can definitely see. So that, Alan was a super cool guy. The team was super professional. Alan was going there to win every race, and anything besides a win wasn't really acceptable. We were going to win, and he was, spending the money to do that. And he got a few race wins in trophy truck. It's just really hard to win trophy truck races, especially back then.
Yes.
And, there was a lot of parts failures back then. You had to be able to change a transmission. You could change a transmission during a race back then and still win a race. So nowadays that's unheard of. You can barely get a flat tire anymore and win a race. So it was definitely cool to see that, and then I worked there for a couple years. And then after that, I actually moved to Hawaii for a little while for fun and worked for Alan over there because he owned car dealerships. So I actually sold Hummers and Cadillacs at Alan's car dealership in Hawaii for like a year. So that was kind of random.
Or
on Oahu.
Okay.
Yeah, on Oahu. Yeah. My girlfriend at the time and me decided we wanted to move to Hawaii. I don't know why, but it was fun. It was cool for like a year. But then that being away from racing over there wasn't too much fun. So that didn't last long.
Yeah,
So.
I visited Hawaii once. We went to the Big Island and then spent a couple of days on Oahu, and I realized that it's way too small for me.
Exactly. You could get from one side to the other in like an hour, and like that's not acceptable. That's just not enough to do,
Exactly. In less than 2 weeks, I drove every single paved road on the Big Island.
Yep. Yeah.
Like
It's tough. Tough coming from San Diego and going to that. It's just not. I don't know. It wasn't for me.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Nice place to visit for a couple of days.
Exactly. Go on vacation there and then come back.
Yeah.
So then when I came back from there, I actually started working at one point for Mango Racing for Gary Magnus, and they had Pro Trucks, and I had some Pro Truck experience because I had worked with Alan on the Pro Trucks before. So I started working at the Mango shop out in Desert Hot Springs, and worked for them for a couple years. That was actually really fun because I got to drive the Pro Trucks too during the races. So Gary would start, and I would usually ride with Gary, and then Gary would get out for a little while, and I would get to drive a section. So that was actually that was a lot of fun. Driving something that actually had some power and was pretty fun class. So that was definitely a cool experience. I think the 2007 run down to Cabo is probably my favorite Baja 1000 still to this day, just because I got to be a part of it from chasing, driving, every part of it, and it went all the way. It's the last time it went to Cabo. It hasn't gone to Cabo since then.
And
so
what year
definitely
was that?
2007.
Yep, that's yep. Okay.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. Did it go one time after that? I forget. It might have gone there one time after that, but
No, I think that's the time that we went down. It was with Pete, and we ended up in fourth place. Pete ended up in fourth. Broke some teeth off the ring gear, and barely made it in. And Robbie passed us before we got to the finish line.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think that was 2007 then. Yeah. So then I did that for a little while, and then I started working. I didn't really like living out in Desert Hot Springs. It's kind of miserable out there. It's 130 degrees during the day in the summer, and then it's freezing cold at night, and just I didn't like living out there too much. Kind of like Hawaii. I guess I really don't like living anywhere besides San Diego County, it sounds like. So I got over that, and then I moved back to San Diego County again, and then I started working for Race Desert actually then.
Okay.
So I had been on Race Desert for forever, and I've always been friends with Curtis and Klaus, and then after Mango, I came back and started working for them for a couple of years and did Race Desert stuff.
So what kind of work did you do with the race teams?
At where?
With Mango Racing or with Fluger, what kind of work were you doing?
Actually prepping the race cars.
Okay.
Yeah, like mechanic work, and then chasing during the races and everything. And I'm definitely not like a lead mechanic or anything. That's for sure. I don't. I was just I would work on the cars, and it was fun, but it wasn't. I don't know. It was fun, but it kind of got you burned out on it at the same time. Long hours working on the car, and then you're kind of over it by the time you're done, and it doesn't make it as much fun anymore. I think it's more fun for me if I'm able to do something else and then go do that for my fun, go racing for fun.
Right.
So that was, racing is a little bit more enjoyable when you're not doing it all day, every day also, in my opinion.
So what did you do for Race Desert?
So for Race Desert, I did basically like message board stuff. I ran their classifieds on there, just kind of helped out. I would go to the races, all the races we would do with them. Klaus had some like live timing stuff that we were working on then. So I would go and help Klaus at the races with our live timing. We actually were one of the first people to do the live broadcasting during a race, like have a live camera during the race at the finish line and talking to people and stuff.
Okay.
So that was cool. I think it was like us and Dirt News. Tim Sanchez was actually doing that back then, also kind of.
Right.
So we were kind of not really competing, but that was the only person that was kind of doing something similar back then. So so that's actually where I met a lot of people too in the race community, was from doing that with Race Desert. Either met them on the message board. There was a lot more racers that posted on the message board back in those days than there is now, really. And going to the races, I would talk to everybody because I'd be at the finish line or at the start line and just start talking to everybody and make connections, get their race stories and stuff. So that was always a lot of fun, working for Race Desert.
So let's talk about some of that Race Desert years when you're there reporting on the races and you're talking to the racers. What's probably the most memorable story that somebody gave to you?
Shoot,
that's
a
going to
good
be a hard
question.
one to think of real quick.
I mean, I know some funny stories that happened,
there you
a little bit or something. Like one time we were at the start line, and it was the Herps brothers, it was Alan Pfluger, and it was Scott Steinberger, and they were talking, right before the start, just in their suits and everything. And Scott comes up behind Alan, and he's got his catheter on, and he just starts pissing, and he puts his catheter right in Alan's shoe, and it's just it's just soaked his shoe, and we're kind of just sitting there oh my God, is he really doing that right now? And then it took a minute for Alan's sock to get wet, and then he was like, what the hell? Did you seriously just do that? He was so it was that, I don't know, that was just one story for some reason that sticks out in my head of, at the start line, seeing everybody there. So that was kind of funny. And that actually, the thing they were talking about, they were trying to make a gentleman's agreement to not take some of the lines that they had all found, because this was back when there was only stub cans, right? So there was no tracker, there was no VCPs, there was none of that. It was basically go from here to here, and if you have the stubs in your can, you're good. So there was a couple lines, and they were like, look, well, let's make an agreement. We're not going to take this line or this line, and they're like, okay, sure. And it's you weren't really going to believe anybody,
Yeah, and then it's all burned in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that was just, I don't know. That was a fun start time there. And then, I don't know. I'd have to think about, a specific story. There's been so many of them. It's just, it's crazy. It's been, I don't know. There's too many to even remember one specific, honestly.
So let's talk about then those after, or I know that you did a lot more racing after that. Didn't you race with Daly for a while?
Yeah. So let me try to. I've done so much. I'm trying to think of where we're at on my timeline. So yeah, that was in. Let's see. So Race Desert, and then who did I race with? Yeah, Pat Daly. I think after that he got a trophy light. He bought a trophy light, and actually, no, you know what? Before that, I raced with Camberg for a little bit.
Okay.
In their trophy truck, when they first had their trophy truck program, I would go up to Camberg and help them work on it a little bit, and then I would co-drive with them. So I did a few races with Jerry and Jason there at Camberg. We did that was actually the first Baja 1000 that I ever raced in. Was 2009 Baja 1000. I raced with the Camberg trophy truck. And that was pretty fun. Me and Jerry did the second half of the course, basically, to the finish. And we didn't have any problems, really. Jerry got stuck one time in a wash, and I got to get out and get the strap, and somebody pulled us. But that was fun. That was my first Baja 1000 experience in a trophy truck, I should say. I had done other Bajas, obviously, but in a trophy truck, that was my first time. So that was fun.
When you step in from, say, a 5 or a 7 or whatever, and you jump into a trophy truck for the first time.
Yep.
What's the difference? What's the feeling for those of us who have never gotten a chance to ride in one?
Pretty much holy shit. I mean, you're going over the stuff, and it eats up everything in front of you. It's smooth, as long as you know how to set it up. You can, it's undescribable, honestly. You have to do it. Go testing with somebody sometime and go for riding one, and you'll kind of just get an idea of it. And the trophy trucks have just evolved so much over the years. They're just even so much better than back then now. They're really unreal, honestly. It's it just you can throw it into anything and it just takes it. It definitely does not beat you up really if it's set up right.
Okay, so have you had a chance to ride in one of the four-wheel drive trophy trucks?
Yes, yeah. I've gone in Andy's. I think once, maybe twice in testing. I have
Okay.
not ridden one in a race, but yeah, I've gone with Andy in his.
What did you
Andy
think of
McMillan.
the difference between the four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive?
Definitely out of the corners, it's way faster, like noticeable. Like when before you would come into a corner in the two-wheel drive and you're sliding through the corner, right? Like the rear end is coming around. Where in the all-wheel drive, you go in the corner and you hit the gas and it just pulls you out of the corner. Like night and day difference, in the truck.
Right.
It's so much faster out of there. On the straightaway, you don't really notice it as much. There's not too much difference on the straightaway because maybe the acceleration is a little better since there's less wheel spin, but out of the corners is where it's most noticeable.
Okay. Cool. So then, let's see, went Camberg, and then was it Daly?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think Pat was 2010, I think 2010 or 2011, I think is when we did the trophy light. And man, that thing, not to bash the trophy lights or anything, but that thing was quite a bit of a pile. I mean, every race we were just breaking something, and Pat was honestly driving it probably too hard. He always had the fast lap, and he always started, and he would always have the fast lap out of like the whole trophy truck or the whole trophy light class. So we named him Fast Lap Pat. That was his nickname, because he'd always just go out there and but something would always break, or we just always had problems with the thing. The front arms would break; they just weren't built strong enough. The rear end housing would crack. The chassis would just break by the 4-link mounts in the front. Like they were just it was a fun class, and it was cool because it was a spec class. So they were all pretty much the same truck. They had all the same parts on them. So you weren't necessarily that much faster than the other guy. You really had to drive the thing.
Right. And you couldn't, if you overdrove it, you were definitely going to break it.
Yeah, or roll it. People roll those things all the time. They're super narrow, and they're pretty top heavy for what they are. So you come in the corner, I mean, you're biking that thing all the time. You're driving it on two wheels in all the corners. So you really have to, if you can drive a trophy light fast, you could drive a trophy truck fast, really. Kind of the same thing with a 16 car. I think the best trophy truck drivers are 16 car drivers. And if you look, Rob Mack, 16 car driver. Luke McMillan, 16 car driver. Andy used to drive 16 cars or one car buggies. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you can drive those, you're going to be quick in a trophy truck, because those are way harder to drive than a trophy truck, I think.
Yeah, you actually have to be able to be a wheelman.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I mean, a trophy truck, anybody could get in a trophy truck just about if you have a little bit of skill, and you could just go drive and you could go finish a race. I'm not saying you're going to win the race, obviously, but you could just go out there and do that. Where if you just take any driver and you just put them in a trophy light or a 16 car or something like that, they're going to crash if they go out there, if they don't know how to drive a little bit. You can't just cruise in those things and do okay.
Yeah, a 16 car doesn't spend a whole lot of time with all four wheels on the ground.
I don't think they ever do. If they do, you're not driving it fast enough.
I've never seen a picture of a 16 car unless it's parked with all four wheels on the ground.
I rode in a 16 car one time, and it was with Luke McMillan at Battle at Prim, and it was actually very boring. We started first off the line, and we finished first off the line. We didn't see anybody. I don't even remember if we lapped anybody, maybe like one or two people. And I was never beaten up so much in a car and wanted out of a car as much as that. I was like, wow. I was like, that wasn't even fun. It was like, that was just stupid.
Torture.
Yeah. It was, so that, yeah, I have no desire to ever get in a 16 car again. And you can call me a wuss or whatever, but no thanks.
It's like going and getting in a bar brawl with 6 guys and you're by yourself.
Yeah, you're just getting your ass beat. It doesn't matter what. Yeah.
So after Daly, who'd you ride with?
After Daly, I think is when I started riding again with Mango. Not working for Mango, but they now had a trophy truck. And 2012, no, you know what? Take that back. Sorry, I forgot. 2012, I actually raced with Pfluger in Chris Kemp's trophy truck. Okay. We were second off the line, and Pistol Pete was first off the line. So
Oh,
here's
I
a funny
remember that.
Pistol story. Yeah.
Yep.
So Pistol drew number 1. He was all excited, all happy about it. And Chris Kemp drew number 2. And Chris was going to start in the car. And then me and Alan were going to get in at San Ignacio. And we were going to go San Ignacio to La Paz, because 2012 was a peninsula run to La Paz.
Right.
So we pre-ran and everything. We had our section all ready to go. And then, the race started and Pistol's going. And that's when you dropped in the wash in Ensenada there.
Yep.
Pete had those Maxxis tires that would always get flat tires on him, and he got a flat tire right in the wash right off the start. His number 1 start lasted from the start line to about mile 1.
Wow.
That's where he got his flat. So then Chris Kemp passed him, and Chris was now first on the road. So me and Alan are sitting in San Ignacio, and we're like, oh, this is cool. We're, now he's first on the road. So he actually stayed first on the road all the way over to San Felipe, and then he had some transmission problems, and they had to have a long pit, and they lost some time and some positions there. And then it was that race was kind of a nightmare for me. It's actually the only time I've ever got out of a race car during a race and didn't finish the section I was supposed to do.
Oh, wow. Why was that?
Well, it was so long. Like, the race started, the first day, and we were awake in San Ignacio. And I don't know if you've ever tried to sleep on race day, but you can't. It's impossible. Like, we knew we weren't getting in until late at night, but I couldn't sleep. Like, there's no way. I'm watching the tracker. I'm listening to, updates. Like, there's no way I'm going to sleep. So I was up all day, and then the truck had those problems. And by the time it got to us, it was super late at night already. And then we get in the truck and we go. I think it was like 50 miles, and the transmission blows up, like lose all the gears. So we're like, oh crap. So we made it over to Scorpion Bay, and we stop at Scorpion Bay. Well, back then the roads into Scorpion Bay weren't paved, and there wasn't the access that there is now. So we had to wait forever for our chase truck to come all the way around with the transmission. And then they finally get it over there. We get it changed. Now it's almost it is the next morning now. So we go to leave. And I was up all night. I couldn't sleep over there. Like, it's hard to sleep in a trophy truck just sitting there. You know what I mean? Yep. So, and it's cold out at night and all that. So then the next morning we get a transmission changed. We go about 40 miles. The rear end blows up. So I'm just like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. So now the chase truck that's over there doesn't have a rear end. The other chase truck does. So we're like, oh my God. So now we have to sit there and wait all day in the middle of the desert for the rear end to get there. It doesn't get there until nighttime. So now we're on the second night. You know what I mean?
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the second night. And I've been up for the whole time, haven't slept at all, haven't eaten anything besides some granola bars or whatever we had for a snack, So now I'm like, I'm just done at that point. I'm like, physically like getting worked kind of. So we change the rear end and we go to Loreto, and I'm like, look, like I got to get out of Loreto. Like, I don't want to make a bad call on the GPS. Like, I'm falling asleep, or I'm just like, you know what I mean? I had to get out. I was like, if I stay in the car, I don't want to make a bad call and have us crash the truck. Right. So I got out of Loreto, and then we put the other backup co-driver in. And that's the only race I ever got out of the car at. And looking back on it, honestly, if I could go back, I probably would have just sucked it up and just stayed in, because it would have been cool to say I never had to get out of a car. But, shit happens. That's the only time I ever did. But, yeah, so that was 2012. That was kind of an experience.
Yeah. That's a long one.
Yeah. And the truck did finish. It finished the next morning. So on the, it was probably a 50-hour time limit then. It probably finished in 48 hours or something like that. I don't even know. So,
but a finish.
Yeah, they got it to the finish. So that was cool for those guys. Alan stuck it out in there and finished, but that was fun. And then after that is when I started racing with Mango. 2013, they had their trophy truck, and I started co-driving for Mango in the trophy truck, and did that.
Nice. And let's talk about what it is that a co-driver, navigator, what your responsibilities are during the race.
Well, honestly, you do a lot. I think it's more important to have a good co-driver than a driver. Because if you're a good driver, it doesn't really matter if you don't have a good co-driver to go with you. Unless you want to try to say like, Ivan Stewart didn't have a co-driver and he was really good. But Ivan didn't race nowadays either. You know what I mean? They didn't have GPSs back then that give you huge advantage. They didn't have MSATs. They didn't have all of the tools that you can use as a co-driver now to make you that much faster. You know,
True.
if Ivan was still racing, I guarantee you he would have a co-driver with him nowadays, probably, just because I don't think you could win anymore without a co-driver, you know. So you just do anything from reading the GPS every turn all the way. Nowadays, people have literally thousands of notes on their GPS that they're calling out during a race. So you have to go pre-running and mark all that. That's your job, to mark all those. Then on race day, you got to call those out. You got to keep the driver focused. You got to tell them when to go faster, when to slow down, when they're being an idiot. And everything's always your fault. So it's always the co-driver's fault, no matter what. That's the rule. So
Unless you win.
Unless you win, it's still your fault, even when you win. You know, any flat tire is always a co-driver's fault. If the car rolls over, it's always a co-driver's fault. So it's definitely not a super fun job, because everything's always your fault. So I really do respect all the co-drivers out there. And, you know, my just changing the freaking tire on these trophy trucks nowadays is gnarly. Like, I'm literally 5'7" and weigh like 150 pounds, which is how much one of these tires weighs, if not more. So, you know, getting out and trying to change the tire, it's definitely not fun. So some of these guys that can do it, like, you know, Andy McMillan's co-driver, Johnny Nelson, he can do it in less than a minute all by himself. Bryce Menzies, his co-driver, Oren, he can do it in less than a minute himself. Like, major props to those guys, because they're not real big guys either. They got it dialed, which is pretty cool, you know,
Right.
to see that, see those guys do that stuff.
So I know that there's different styles for calling out while, you know, making the calls as the driver is, you know, is driving, and you're making
Yeah.
calls on, you know, left, right. You know, take us through, for, you know, this is for people that have never been in that seat.
Yeah.
What is it? What are the kind of calls, or how, you know, how did you go through that? What was the process?
Well, it depends. It depends on the driver mostly, what they want their style to be. There's a couple different styles. There's rally style, which I did not used to do, but now when I drive nowadays, I have my co-driver do rally style, and I like it way better. But when I was co-driving, we didn't do rally style, just because people weren't really doing it back then, and you know, there wasn't anybody doing it back then.
Okay.
So it was different then than now.
Explain rally style.
So rally style is you basically do the degree of the turn coming up. In the gear, like you're in a five or 6 speed gearbox. So say you have a 5-speed gearbox, right?
Right.
So if you're coming up to a right and it's super tight, like a 90 or a 180 or something, it's going to be a right 1. So you're going to be in first gear for that turn,
All right.
right? So R1, you know, and you'll say the distance in 300 feet R1, you know, 300 feet R1, 150 feet R1, or, you know, 50 feet R1 right here, R1. And then, you know, you got to get all the way down, like first gear, you know. And then if it's an R5, it's basically just an easy turn. You can go pretty quick. So you'd be in like 5th gear, almost wide open, but you're going right. So same thing, 300 feet R5, you know, R5. And then you kind of know. And then dangers, you can do the same thing, you know, either danger 1 or double danger if it's really bad. You know, skulls, a lot of people use skulls for danger on the GPS. So it'd be like, you know, skull coming up, skull, something like that. Everybody does it a little bit differently. And it really depends on what the driver wants that you're with. And then the co-driver kind of matches what the driver wants, you know.
Okay.
Some of the co-drivers, nowadays, they ride in with a bunch of different people. For instance, like Erica Sachs, she rides in a bunch of different cars, and she just keeps her same style and makes the drivers learn her style, because it wouldn't make sense for her to ride with 5 different people and have 5 different styles.
True.
So she does the rally style, and if you have her riding with you, you learn to have her style, you know. And she rode with me last year in the Baja Light, and that style was perfect. Like, she has it dialed. It was, if you ride with her or you know, you drive and have her ride, you'll want to use that style every time. So I think the rally style is the way to go for sure.
Okay. Cool. So what other kind of nuances for somebody, let's say somebody wants to get in a car, and maybe they've worked for somebody or been down to the races and stuff. How would you suggest somebody get a position like that?
Well, there's two ways you can do it. Either if you have money, you can just go buy your way into a seat. Do an arrive and drive. For instance, the Brenthals, they have a really good arrive and drive program. If you can afford it and you want to go race a spec truck, the Brenthals literally bring a spec truck, chase trucks, crew, everything to the race for you. You pay them, you show up at the race, you get your suit and your helmet, and you go get in the car at the start line, and you go race. At the end of the race, you get out of the truck and you fly home, and you come back next race and do the same thing. So if you have enough money, that's kind of a cool way to do it, except that's not cheap.
Yeah,
Obviously
I would imagine
you're paying
not.
for that. Yeah. So if you don't have the money, your best way, if you don't have a race car and you want to get in it, it's going to be really hard. Your best thing to do is try to go volunteer for a team and kind of maybe work your way up, in my opinion. And you're going to have something to offer, because everybody wants to get in a race car. So why are they going to let you get in a race car?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's honestly very hard. If you have no experience, who's going to put you in the car? Like, why would you? I wouldn't put somebody in the car with me when I'm driving that has no experience, because it just is too dangerous. It's really, really tough, honestly, to get in a car.
Right. One of the things that I really remember was Pete having the 3 seats. And
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because of his vision, but the gauge guy was kind of the guy that paid for his seat, it seemed, most of the time. And, the Navi was the guy that, was there because he could navigate. The gauge guy was there because he had a checkbook.
Exactly. That's exactly what Pete did. Yep. Pete couldn't go racing without that guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing so many of those guys get sick just riding in Harbor Freight.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine that.
No, if you get motion sickness, you probably are going to get sick in a car. Honestly, it's the same thing. It's just like being on a boat. You're going up and down. Honestly, it's even worse than a boat some of the time, because you're looking through your visor, so you're not even looking straight out. And then you're looking through the cage in the car, which has tubes in front of you, and you're looking through a window net on the side. So there's literally a layer that you're looking through all over the place. You're not just sitting on a boat, just looking out in the open ocean and getting sick. So it's even worse a lot of times, And then if your visor gets scratched, now you have scratches on the screen right in front of you, or when it's dusty, you can't see. And then if you're trying to look at the GPS at the same time, it's, you really got to not get motion sick to be in a car. That's for sure.
Right. I don't know if I could do that. I think I could drive, but I don't know if I could navigate. To be honest.
Yeah. Driving is totally different, because you're concentrating on just what you're looking at. You're not really looking around at much else,
Right. I know the worst that I've ever gotten sick on a fishing boat was I reached into the tool bag, and we were probably in 6 to 8 foot, and they were pretty close, and we were getting bounced around a lot, and the outriggers were bolted, and we were trying to get the outriggers out, and there was like 3 of us that all put our heads into the toolbox to grab tools to get the bolts out, and all of us got sick with just 30 seconds.
Because you're looking down.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. No, same thing in the car. Same thing in the race car. If you're looking down too long and you're going, through an up and down section, over through bushes and, on both sides, a real narrow trail, you could definitely get sick like that very easily. Yeah. And I think the buggies actually get more sick than the trucks, because the way they work, there's I don't know how to say it, the way they float, or the movement. I think it's easier to get sick in a buggy than it is a truck. Just my personal opinion.
Because it's more violent, like tighter, bigger seas,
Yeah.
So let's talk about stepping into the 4-wheel drive scene. I know you've done some stuff now with Ultra 4. What have you done out there?
Well, I went to an Ultra 4 race, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something, to watch the 4400 race before I really knew what it was. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm not really into the rock crawling stuff too much, like Jeep slow trails and stuff. But, I was like, man, these guys are actually going pretty fast, and they're going in the desert, and then they're going rock crawling. It's like, that's kind of cool. It's a little bit more exciting than just watching like a Jeep trail or something for me, So I thought that was kind of cool. And then I didn't really do much with it for a few years. And then the last couple of years, when they brought they had the T1s, they were calling them there, the trophy trucks. When they brought that out, Dave brought that, I was all about it, because I'm like, oh, this is cool. Now we're going out and we're watching the the trophy trucks at the same event. Like, this is cool, this is exciting, and it's a little bit different than any other kind of race because it's definitely a harder course. I think doing the King of the Hammers race in a desert truck puts as much or more stress and works your car almost as much as doing like a Baja 500 probably, or a Vegas to Reno or something like that, and it's only about a 200-mile race or whatever it is, 250 miles, whatever the course is.
Right.
It's definitely very rough, hard on equipment. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And
so that was fun, going and experiencing that.
So did you at those races then, were you reporting?
No, the first couple. Well, yeah, I had started my Fishgistics thing before the trophy truck started racing there. So when they started racing there, I was doing some coverage of it. But Dave had such good live stream that I was like, you know what? I'm not going to try and do my coverage. I'm just going to go and help Dave and them with their coverage. Because I think I can add some stuff to their coverage. So the very first year of the trophy trucks racing, I sat in the TV production truck right next to the producer during the race, because those people, they didn't have any idea who any of these desert people were.
Right.
The people that were running the TV show, the guys in the truck, they knew the rock crawler guys and stuff, but they had no idea who the desert racers were. So I was sitting in there and just kind of helping them, with what I was seeing on the monitors. If I got an update, I'd be like, oh, that's Bryce Menzies, that's Andy McMillan. They didn't know, like when they're showing a truck, they didn't specifically know who it was. So I just kind of helped them out the first year with information in the TV truck.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then it kind of just evolved from there.
And so let's talk about your Fishgistics. That's hard for
Yep.
me to say because I want to say fish sticks.
Yeah, that was the point. It's a joke name almost that everybody will remember.
Yes, absolutely. Tongue twisters get me though.
Yeah. Oh, it's called everything. Fish dicks, fish sticks, everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
So let's talk about what you do, like what you just did with the Baja 1000.
Yeah, that was actually some of our biggest audience was watching that. That was some of our biggest ones updates I've done yet. So that was cool. It's it's catching some traction. Basically what it is, for people that don't know, I do during the big races. I have the social media channels. So on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, it's just Fishgistics. And I have those channels. I post, in between races, all kinds of updates, media, anything. I go testing with somebody, I post on there. So that's my content in between races. And then during the races, for the big races, like the Score and the Best in the Desert races, every hour I go live and do a live update. So I go live on all those channels, not Instagram, but on Facebook and YouTube. And I talk for like 15 or 20 minutes and do a summary of the last hour of racing. So I show the tracker, which, kind of shows where everybody is, either the Score tracker or the Best in the Desert tracker. And then I will do, I'll talk about it, and people can come in and interact and be like, hey, do you know where this car is or where this car is? And I kind of help them find, their cars and stuff like that. And then it's kind of caught on that I've been doing that. And so it's getting a little bigger and bigger, and it's just kept growing. And every race that I do that, we get more viewers, and people seem to like it. And it's definitely helped having the contacts that I have throughout the years for either the different teams that I've worked with or met at races or met at events, because during the race, my phone is just blowing up with information pretty much the whole time. I kind of know, honestly, like almost one person on almost every big name team. I know at least one person on it. And a lot of the teams I know at least one person on it. So they'll give me updates, what's going on with their race car during the race.
Well, that's awesome.
So it's pretty cool to be able to share that information, because desert racing is very hard to spectate, either in person or there's no live TV of it. Dave has live coverage at his race, but that's kind of like a closed loop race. It's a little bit different, The Baja 1000, there's no live coverage of it besides what Score does, but it's like they have a camera here or there. There's not a consistent. You can't watch the whole thing the whole time like you can NASCAR.
Yeah, you can't watch it play out.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't really know what's going on. You can only know what they're showing you on the screen at that second, and then it gets dark and there's nothing that they can show because it's dark,
Right. And that's one of the things that I think is it's not detrimental, but it's a hurdle to get over with
Yes.
marketing partners for teams or the associations because of the logistics out there.
Yeah.
The coverage, cell phone coverage in Baja is much better now than back in the mid 2000s. That's for damn
Oh
sure.
yeah. Night and day difference. Yeah. But it's still not good.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, the to give that return on investment to the partners, there's so much that has to be done before and after, because during is nearly impossible unless you have somebody dedicated like yourself or somebody that's working with a specific team that they're feeding information so that they can get it out in across social media.
Yes, and that's honestly why I started doing what I'm doing with Fishgistics, because there was nothing like that. Nobody was doing anything like that. So during the race, nobody had any idea what was going on. You're sitting at home and you're like, you could look at the tracker and see a little dot going around, but you don't know what it meant when they stopped. You didn't know what it meant when their tracker stopped working. You didn't know where they were. You know what I mean? You had no idea any of the backstory behind everything besides seeing a little dot going around the screen.
Right.
So I try to get the information from everybody and then kind of fill in the gaps. Like nowadays it's pretty cool because if like, Andy or Bryce or one of those big guys in the trophy truck gets a flat tire, someone on their team will literally, I'll know that they got a flat tire before their tracker stops moving and goes to 0 miles an hour. So I'll be like, oh crap, Luke just got a flat tire. Watch, he's going to get a flat tire right here. And his tracker says like 40 miles an hour. And then within 30 seconds, his tracker updates and it goes to 0 miles an hour. And I'm like, don't worry, he just has a flat tire. But people would never know that looking at it. They're like, oh no, did Luke break? Or just something like that, for example. So it's like, look, he's going to be fine. He's changing the flat tire. And then sure enough, a minute later, his tracker's moving again. And you're like, okay, that was a flat tire. But nobody would know that.
Right. So are guys like texting you?
Yeah. Yeah. Texting me. I also have an MSAT here that I have a few teams channels on.
Okay.
So I literally have direct communication with some teams. For instance, Dave Cole, you guys all know Dave.
Yep.
I had an MSAT directly with Dave at the Baja 1000. So it was actually pretty fun because he was the only person in the car. And he's like, dude, call me as much as you want because I'm going to have nothing else to do besides driving. He's like, I'll talk to you on the radio as much as you want. So during a few of my hourly updates, I actually called Dave live during my hourly updates. And so we were talking to Dave on the MSAT on my live update. So that was the first time that's ever been done anywhere. No one's ever done that before in off-road desert racing.
Well,
so it was kind of cool.
I have to say that I did pay attention this year to the Baja 1000 and what you were doing with Fishgistics, not Fishgistics. Okay. And I heard some of the conversation with Dave at times, and I thought that was pretty cool. So that's congratulations on getting that done. And I thought your coverage is pretty unique. I remember back in the day there was guys like that Ben Yen, I think his name was.
Oh, Robert Yen.
Robert Yen. Yeah, that Bob Yen. And he'd have
Bob
like
Yen.
15 cameras and microphones and God knows what else. And he was trying. I mean, but just kind of a unique person.
Yeah.
And then I know that Tim Sanchez was, trying to keep things update.
Yep.
And but with the change in technology, especially with like the MSAT, with what you were able to do this time, I'm sure there's going to be others that are going to go, here's my number, call and talk to me.
Yeah. And it's really going to change more in another year or two also because Starlink, Elon Musk Starlink, when Starlink gets over Baja and you have a mobile antenna that is just like the MSAT, you are going to have internet, basically a Wi-Fi zone in every single one of these race trucks if they want to. So you could have, in theory, a live camera or multiple cameras on all of these race trucks streaming during the race. You could have their Motec, all their data logging, all of that. Anyone could see that anytime they want to, anywhere on the peninsula or any desert race. It's really going to be, the game is really going to change as far as media and technology in the next 2 years. It really is. And it's pretty cool. I can't wait for that to happen because I imagine if you could have 30 cars all streaming live in-car video, and all you do is go on a website and you push a button and you watch whoever you want. You know, kind of like Sunday Ticket, your NFL Sunday Ticket. You have like 8 games playing at once. Well, you put 8 cameras up on the screen and you're watching 8 in-cars at the same time.
Wow.
You know, and that's
be cool.
That's within 2 years. Within 2 years, that will be happening. I guarantee you. At the most 2 to 3 years. Wow. All it's going to take is that mobile antenna and those satellites to get over Baja and have coverage, or Nevada or wherever. They're actually over Nevada now, and that's going to happen, and it's going to be pretty cool.
That will definitely change the game. I like that. I don't remember the name, but it was like something Star, Global Star, or something like that, or Global. Yep. And I remember
Global Star is a satellite provider of like an Iridium network type thing, but it's a different network.
No, that's not what I'm thinking of. It was some guys that I remember. Pete had like one of the first units, and we put him into a couple of the chase trucks so that he could look at they could look at the screen that they had in the race truck and see where the chase crews were at, and the chase crews could see, get data acquisition and everything else off of the truck, as long as it was all hooked up, and we could follow along. But I was like, okay, Pete, what's one of those cost? I want to put one into my truck, and I forget what it was. It was like $5,000 or $10,000 or something. I was like, all right, I'll ride with somebody. No, that's Rob Mack has that in his truck. Croyer has that connected to Rob Mack's truck, so Croyer can actually monitor his the whole time. But it works off of a satellite, a high orbit satellite. So getting the connection to there is very, very slow, and it doesn't work very reliably. Right. So the Starlink is a low orbit satellite, which is much more reliable and much easier to connect with, and the speeds are just night and day difference. So they'll be huge. You'll have 100 megabits, where right now you have like 2 if you're lucky to a satellite. True. So it's going to be game changer once that is up there for sure. Well, and I think that's really going to change a lot of different things. I'm now a boat owner, and we don't go out long distance in our boat, but eventually we plan to. Well, that's all going to help for our family and friends and everybody else to watch what we do, but also for people that are really into boating, yachting, watching the big races, worldwide races and all that kind of stuff. So I think you're going to see, especially these big long distance type events where, there were no spectators. I think we're going to start seeing more spectators involved in it. Yeah. Which will just help the sports.
Yeah. No, it's gonna help them grow. Like I said, it's hard to watch a desert race. If you don't know what you're doing, you can't watch a desert race. You don't just turn your TV on to, CBS and watch it live like you do a NASCAR race or F1 race or whatever. You can't do that right now. Exactly. Dave Cole with his race is the closest you could do to that, really, with his live streaming. It's pretty close, but you go on your computer, go on the internet and watch it. And he does a great job. And honestly, like, that's why I have not ever tried to do any of my stuff on that same day. Like I said, I just go and help him. So last year I went and he asked me to do the commentary. He's like, hey, why don't you go do the commentary with him and see how it goes? And that was actually really fun. That was my first time I've ever done live commentary in person like that at a race, besides what I do, during my hourly updates. That was pretty cool. I guess I didn't do too bad of a job. I didn't get fired because he wanted me to do it again this year. So, we're gonna.
When he fires you, you'll know about it because it's going to happen immediately. He's going to walk in wherever you're at.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so this is a funny thing. I told him, I'm like, look, I don't even want to get paid, because if you're not paying me, you can't bitch at me. You can't get mad at what I'm doing. Well, he can, but I'll just tell him F off. I don't really care.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because I'm not getting paid. So if I'm not getting paid, there's no requirements of what I'm supposed to be doing as far as I'm concerned. So,
exactly.
So I'm going to do it again this year, and I'm going to have fun with it again, and it should be fun. I think I'm going to do both days of the desert racing this year. Last year I just did the T1, the trophy truck day. So I'm going to do both days this year. So that should be fun. Cool. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Dave and I go way back. When he was rock crawling in our series. So.
Oh, okay, right on. Yeah, Dave's a cool guy. I think he has he has a short temper, but definitely I've seen that. But at the same time, I think his intentions are very good.
Yes, Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is besides the Starlink coming, what's on the horizon for you?
Um, that's a really good question. I don't really know. I don't know. I'm kind of just going with the flow right now. We'll see how the Fishgistics thing goes. I still have a Monday through Friday job too. It's just I don't know if everybody knows that. I work at Daily Engineering
Okay.
in Temecula. We build dry sump oil pump systems for all these race cars actually. So a lot of people in Desert run our stuff now. All the trophy trucks do, and a lot of other people. But yeah, so I do that Monday through Friday, and then I just do Fishgistics on the side. So it's kind of turning into a little bit bigger of a thing than I initially thought it would. So I don't know what'll happen in the future, but I'm just going to keep going with it and keep doing it as long as I'm having fun. If I stop having fun, then I'm going to stop doing it. I make a little bit of money doing Fishgistics now because I have some sponsors that have come on board, but it's for fun. I don't do it to make money. I didn't start doing it to make money, and I never will, because as soon as you start doing it to make money more than have fun, it changes the way it works. I think it works good now because I'm having fun doing it and I like doing it. If that changes, I don't think people will want to watch it anymore.
The only way
I think
you
it
can
changes
make
the
it
attitude.
work that way is if you take some guys that enjoy it like you do, put them to work on it, and then you're the front man. So
Yeah,
you ride
yeah,
that technology wave at the front like you're kind of doing,
yeah,
and you perfect it before anybody else can do it. And then
yeah,
you get a couple of guys, young guys that are, or women that want to be that end and do the 48 hours wide awake,
yeah,
and then you can ride the front. That would be the
yeah,
way to do that.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and it's honestly, like, I don't even know anybody that I could really like ask to do it right now. Like, and I'm not trying to be like big headed or think I'm the best at it or something, but it's really hard to have all I've worked over all the years to get all the connections and have, I think most people like me or talk to me at least, even if they don't like me. Whereas a lot of other people in desert racing, it kind of seems they have their own little niche group. And if you're not in that group, they're like, F that guy, or I'm not, whatever that guy, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Oh yeah.
Like they don't, like Cameron Steele is probably the prime example. Everybody likes Cameron Steele. I don't really know anybody that doesn't. I'm sure somebody doesn't, but Cameron gets along with everybody everywhere.
If they
Like
do, it's a
he's the
jealousy
nicest
thing.
guy. 100%. They're jealous because
Right.
he's the nicest, friendliest guy in off road and does the most he can do for anybody at any time. And he's helped me out a lot too, which I do appreciate. And I think it just takes a special type of person to be able to do that. And you can't just, I don't think I could just hire very many people to do that and it still be the same. I think it is what it is because like I'm the one doing it. And as soon as I change that, I don't know if it's going to be good anymore. And then I don't want to do it anymore if it's not good,
Right. Yep.
So I don't know. It's kind of a tough spot to be in. But like I said, I'm having fun doing it. So I don't know. We'll see how long that lasts.
Well,
So
awesome.
yeah.
So what else? You touched on that you're building the dry sumps, working on the engineering end of it, and any prime stories that you got from the past that we can share with anybody.
Well, the one good story, the one good story that everybody always, if you're racing back in the day, kind of remember is when I went and did the 2005 Baja 1000 in my truck, my Toyota truck. And it kind of created a lot of stir on the internet back in the day. And I'm still to this day the only Sportsman truck entry that Sal Fish has ever had to put out a press release out about after the race.
Really?
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What was the press
So,
release?
well, I'll just tell you the story real quick because
Okay.
otherwise it won't make any sense. So, 2005 Baja 1000, I went down there with Klaus with Race Desert,
Right.
and we went down to spectate. We drove my truck down. So, drove my race truck down. It was still street legal because it was a 1450 truck. We drove it across the border, drove it down to the race. We're at contingency, and I'm walking around, and all of a sudden I see a Ranger come through, like what we had raced in, an MDR. And I walk up to the guy and I'm like, hey, what class is 1500? Because he had a 1500 number on there. And he's like, oh, it's Sportsman truck. I'm like, oh, what is, I didn't even know. I'm like, what is Sportsman truck? He's like, oh, it's just, there's no rules really. It's just Sportsman. It's a $700 entry, which was about half of a normal entry. And there's no payback. And you start in the back. You're like the last class to go. I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. So I had a couple buddies with me and I'm like, hey, why don't we do the race tomorrow? And I'm like, I drove the truck down here. Like the truck's ready. We can probably just go do a couple little things to it and a little extra prep. And then let's race tomorrow instead of spectating. Like, let's go race. And so they're like, okay, I guess so. So I'm like, this is when I didn't have any money barely. So I'm like scrounging together money. I'm like, okay, well, how much money do you have? And my buddy pulls out his, money. He's got a couple $100. Another guy, I'm like, how much do you have? I'm like, we just need $700 and then we need to be able to get enough for like gas and then we're good. So between a couple people, we came up with enough money for the entry. And I called my buddy ESB who built the truck, who was up here in Escondido. And I'm like, hey, can you go over to my parents' house? I was living with my parents. I'm like, can you go to my parents' house and grab my helmets and grab the light bar and my race suit? And he's like, oh God, why? I'm like, we're racing tomorrow. He's like, what? he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, we're going to race the Baja 500 tomorrow. So he's like, okay, I'm on my way, but I've never been to Mexico. So where do I go? I'm like, just go across the border, stay to the right and follow the signs at Ensenada. And then when you think you're getting close to Ensenada, start calling us on the race radio and we'll meet up from there. So he's like, okay. so anyways, so he goes and gets the light bar, gets the race suits, gets the helmets. I go over to the Pfluger pit and I talk to Alan and Scott Steinberger's over there and a couple other people. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm racing. They're like, what? And they're like, well, that Mike's Sky Ranch loop is really gnarly. They're like, if you haven't pre-run that, like, I don't know if you're going to make it because we were all the way in the back, They're like, by the time you get there, that section's going to be pretty gnarly. I'm like, and we had no chase or anything, So they're like, why don't you just take the crossover trail, which is what everybody knows is the crossover trail. Just take that as like a shortcut. So I'm like, okay, I guess, like, whatever, we'll just whatever. So we start the race and we have no dump cans. We have no anything. So we're like, well, the course goes by the Pemex in a couple spots. We'll just fill up at the Pemex, So we get down to past Colonette, down there. It's like San Catine, I think it was. And we go off the race course, first fuel stop. We fill up at the Pemex. So we come up with our suits on, our helmets and everything. We're in the race and we fill up at the Pemex, and then we get back on the course and then we go up and where the course went off to go to the Mike's Loop, we didn't do it. And we went back up and we took the crossover road. So we get over the crossover road and get to Valley T. And at this point, we had passed a bunch of cars that we didn't realize, right? Because it was, we got jumped in front of a bunch of people. So we're like, what are we going to do now? Like, it's dark. Like, we don't really know who's coming. We don't know anything we're doing much. We're like, screw it. Let's go on the course. So we're waiting there. And all of a sudden, Larry Ragland comes by and in his trophy truck. Uh-huh. And I'm like, he's usually pretty fast. Like, we might be up towards the front a little bit too much.
Let's sit and wait. Go ahead, tacos.
Yeah. So we're like, screw it. Let's just go. It's nighttime. We can see lights coming. Like, we'll just move out of the way as soon as we see lights behind us anywhere, So we jumped on the course and we went and we did the finish. And I think we got passed by one car and that was it. So we get into the finish, long story short, and they come to check our stub cans because there's no trackers. And I was like, oh yeah, we don't have all the stubs. Like, we were just doing it for fun. Like, we didn't do the whole thing. So the guy's like, he's like, oh, okay, whatever. It's a Sportsman truck. They don't really care. So we're like, okay, cool. That was fun. We did the 500, most of the course, and now we're going to drive the truck home the next day. So we drive the truck home, and I get home and I go on Race Desert, and all these people are like, oh, Fish won the Baja 500. Like, what? They're looking at the results, and in the Sportsman class, they had me as a finisher, and they had me as winning it. Well, I'm like, uh-oh. I'm like, this is not good.
Yeah.
So it started a huge thing on Race Desert, because I was like, well, we didn't really do the course. And people are like, well, how did SCORE give you a finish? They said you finished. Like, are they not checking the stubs? Or like, this is blah, 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 and started a whole big deal. So then, like, Sal never even called me or anything. He just they put out a press release. They're like, due to, Austin's own admissions of not completing the whole course, they have been DQ'd from the race and blah, 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 blah. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of a funny story back then, we did the whole thing and they made a big deal out of it. But we never went to the awards. We never went to get our plaque or anything because we didn't finish. You know what I mean? We didn't think we knew we were going to be DQ'd. We didn't have all the stubs.
Right.
So they kind of just, it was a Sportsman truck. They didn't really care. They're just like, oh, whatever.
How'd the Ranger do? Do you know?
Nobody finished in our class. That was the
Okay.
only car that, yeah. And that's why I didn't even feel that bad about it, because nobody else even finished. Like, they didn't even get close. So I think there was 3 cars in our class. There was like nobody.
That's awesome, though.
So yeah, so that was a fun story from the past, which is funny because nowadays they have the Sportsman shortcut during score races. So I always kind of joke with people, and I'm like, yeah, we created the Sportsman shortcut, because we were like, the Sportsman shortcut usually goes around the gnarliest part of the course, right? Nowadays,
Yes.
and that's what we did back then, before it was a Sportsman shortcut. So it's just kind of funny, like it's come full circle.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
So one more story like that? Anything you got?
man, I don't know. I mean, I can talk for hours. People will probably get bored.
No, not at all. I'm not.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's see. What do I got? Well, I'm still doing some racing now, so I might have some more stories coming shortly.
Okay.
I've been racing with my buddy. Actually, Pistol Pete's story. My buddy that I race with now is Phil Casey, and he's from New Zealand. And I don't know if you know Phil or not. He did the 2012 Baja 1000 when it went to La Paz. 2017. He did the 2017 Baja 1000 when it went to La Paz in one of Pistol Pete's rental Baja lights.
Okay.
He had never done a desert race before. He had just moved here from New Zealand short time before that. And he's like, I want to go racing. So he found Pete's rental program, and he's like, I'm going to do the whole course. So he rented a Baja light from Pistol. He pre-ran the whole course with Pistol, and then him and his co-driver drove the entire Baja 1000 without getting out of the car in Pistol Pete's Baja light. I mean, they got out to get out when they got stuck and stuff, but they stayed in the car driving the whole race.
Yeah,
So
they Ironmanned it. Yeah.
They Ironmanned it, yeah, which technically it's not an Ironman if there's a co-driver with you. I have learned.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. It's called soloing it if you guys stayed in it like that. And the internet people will get you if you call it an Ironman, just so you know.
Yeah, well, those people that are bitching about that, they ought to try it.
Yeah. For sure. So I'm told that, people that ride a bike by themselves Ironman it, and Ivan Stewart Ironmanned it because he was the only one in the car.
Right.
Yeah. So anyways, so Phil not Ironman, he solos it, and that was with Pistol. So now I race with Phil randomly. He fishes also, and we kind of ran into each other through mutual friends with Pete. And so Phil actually, after Pete had his accident, Phil bought that truck from the Sorens.
Okay.
So Phil owns that Baja Light now, and for the past 2 years or so, I've been racing with Phil in the Baja Light. I can't race the big races because I have to do my coverage. So we'll do like a snore race or a moor race, in between, or a record race. We've done a record race earlier this year. So we're doing Rage of the River next weekend. So that's my next race that I'm going to. I'll be driving the Baja Light.
Well, excellent.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's fun. You got to get some driving in. I've officially retired from the right seat though. I'm never co-driving again for anybody. I will just do some driving.
That's good that you can do that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
clout.
it's fun. Well, yeah. People still ask me all the time if I want to ride. I'm like, no. I'm over it.
I remember Bob
don't
Bauer
wanna be
saying that
responsible
same
for
thing.
anybody. Yeah, it got to a point where I don't want to be responsible for if I make a wrong call or just I don't know anything. One of our co-drivers got killed in the 2015 Baja 1000 when I was with Mango. The guy riding in the other car, he got killed during the race. And it kind of just changed my perspective on it, and just I don't know. I like to be the one in control of the car and just go from there.
Understood.
So
Understood.
yeah.
Well, Austin, thank you for coming out and spending some time in the interview and sharing your life and giving some perspective to off-road racing. Most of the people that listen to this podcast are four-wheel drive guys, so they're Jeep enthusiasts or they may race, either have raced with us in Dirt Riot, which was kind of a regional type thing for the Ultra 4 series, or alongside, not with, but kind of like, I should say. And they haven't had that experience. A lot of them are stepping up and going out to race desert racing now, especially here in Texas. There's quite a few little associations going on. But I want to say thank you so much. And I remember the first time I actually had conversations with you was I had posted up some 49er tickets for sale,
Oh,
and
okay.
you'd got the San Diego Charger tickets when they were
Yep.
still in San Diego,
Yep.
and that was the other thing I was going to bring up to you is the only problem about living in San Diego is all you had was the Chargers and the Padres.
Tell me about it. And I was one of the biggest Charger fans ever. We would go to all the games. I even met my current wife at the Chargers game. So it was yeah, when they left, it sucked. And we are no longer Charger fans, and I'm actually no longer even a football fan anymore, mostly. That was it. I got so pissed off when they left. I was just, I don't know. Maybe one day they'll come back.
Hopefully.
But yeah. And the real funny on like the Jeep thing and the 4-wheel drive thing or whatever. I went to Sand Hollow this year for my first time.
Okay.
And that actually was one of the most fun places I've ever been. And we took our UTVs. I took my Polaris RZR there, and that was so much fun that I can't wait to go back next year. We're actually going to go. We already booked the place again, and we're going longer than we did this year.
Excellent.
So the 4-wheel drive stuff is definitely fun.
What event did you go through?
We didn't even go through an event.
Okay.
We just went. We randomly. I've seen a bunch of people talking about it, and I'm like, you know what? We normally have a yearly Pismo trip that one of my friends started a while ago, and then Pismo was shut down for COVID. So we're like, well, crap, where are we going to go for our Pismo trip? And so I'm like, let's go to Sand Hollow. Like, all these people keep talking about it, and it looks like awesome. I'm like, let's go there. So we did, and now we're hooked. I think our yearly Pismo trip is gone now, and we're doing a yearly Sand Hollow trip now.
Well, Keith Hook, he runs the UTV. There's an internet site that he runs, and he works.
Yeah, I know Keith.
Keith runs the UTV section at Trail Hero, and Trail Hero is my son's event.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I know. And we were there the week before that event, actually, this year. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great area. Area.
It's super, super fun. Yeah, so it's kind of like the 4-wheel drive stuff. I'm kind of I don't want to say I'm getting into it because I wouldn't call myself a 4-wheel drive person at all. I'm still in the desert racing stuff.
Right.
But that was fun to go do. And honestly, having it, I used to make fun of these UTVs all the time and call them golf carts. I still call them golf carts, so they'll always be golf carts.
True.
But they're very capable now, and it is pretty cool to have a vehicle that you can go to a place like that and do a little bit of everything. We literally drove it on the street from our house. Then we drove it in the desert section, and then we drove it on some rock trails, and then we drove it over to the lake. We went on the dunes. Like, it had everything, and the UTV goes everywhere. So it's pretty cool to have a vehicle that before you used to have like a Jeep and you'd go on Jeep trails,
Yep.
Or you have a desert truck and you go on desert trails in Barstow or whatever. But now you can have something that you can do like everything with. So it's kind of cool to be able to merge the different the groups in. And even when I was there, some of the Ultra 4 guys were out there randomly and met up with us, and like I met some new guys. So it's kind of cool just to kind of intermingle with everybody.
Perfect.
In the different genres or whatever.
Excellent. Okay, well, again, thank you for coming on board and having the conversation with us, and we'll have to do it again.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.